This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description to support now.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
I'm Nellie Sudri, the #1 dating coach and matchmaker for high-value singles. I've been featured in Forbes and Cosmopolitan, and you may have seen me work my magic on the hit TV show Match Me in Miami. I've even partnered with dating apps that you probably have on your phone right now. So if you're fed up and frustrated with modern dating, first of all, I don't blame you. And second, you have come to the right place. So I'm here to help you meet the person of your dreams so you can ultimately get out of the dating game altogether. I'm so excited to finally announce my new podcast, High Value Dating, which you can now stream anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'm excited for you to find love, and I hope you are too. So if so, make sure to tune in to High Value Dating.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
This is Writers on Film, the only podcast dedicated to books on cinema. Hello, my name's John Bleasdale. I'm a writer and film critic. I'm not sure if I need to keep saying that actually, but anyway. Today I'm talking to Pamela Hutchinson, who is a columnist and blogger. Her work has appeared all over the place, including Sight and Sound and The Guardian. She is an expert on silent cinema and wrote the BFI Classics book on Pandora's Box. Wonderful film that everybody should try to see. A wonderful book that everyone should try to read. Remember, if you like the episode, please like, subscribe, and in any way you can spread the word. We depend upon, I depend upon you guys, the listeners, to do my publicity work for me. So please do that. You can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Jonty, DRJONTY. But before you do any of that, please enjoy this conversation.
One of the things I can't bear about, when the things that put people off watching older films is this sort of thing when people say, well, you must watch it, it's great and it's important, and it normally means something that's 4 hours long. And you just think, it's a lot, it's daunting to people. Why can't you just show them actually a James Cagney film? It's going to be 18 minutes of your life, and it's going to have so many ideas in it. You're going to get excited about cinema, and that's much better than telling something that something is great or prestigious. But that's just my opinion, man.
How did you first get into silent cinema as such? Because it's not an obvious place to go for a lot of people.
No, it's not, and I think that's probably why I went there. So when I was a teenager, I lived nowhere near the cinema. I lived in the middle of nowhere. That's not true. I lived in a small town in the Midlands, and there wasn't a cinema near us. But I was beginning to sort of, watch more things on TV and begin to realise I was quite interested in cinema. So, when I did move to London when I was 17, I started going to the local art house. I started going to the BFI. I started being able to watch a lot more of the things that people said you should be watching. And I don't even mean like a really serious canon so much as the things that are recommended in magazines. And I was enjoying lots of these films, but they were so clearly not designed for 17-year-old girls, you know? And I was just like, I realised I was going to have to find something in the cinema that stimulated me and excited me like these good films did, but that was just off the beaten track. I was never going to be that person who was all over. What was really popular then was the late 1970s. Great films, absolutely great films, but a lot of them are not, you know, not what you want to watch at that age. So I started just picking a few things at random, and it ended up being silent films that just, I would go and see a programme of shorts at the BFI completely out of context. Knew nothing about what studios, who the star was, whether these were prestigious things or whether these were well connected in film history, and just found it interesting. And I love the power of silent cinema, obviously, the way that you use your imagination, you feel so engrossed. But I also loved being a bit untethered from all the things that I'd heard about cinema, the sort of sense of mystery about the history. You know, I can imagine what it was like to go and see certain recent Hollywood films for the first time, something made in the last sort of 50, 60 years. But I, you know, at that point, and we still have lots of gaps, I didn't know too much about how people were watching these films, you know, and how they were enjoying them, what they felt about them. And I just thought, you know, this has got everything I love about cinema, but it's got questions that I want to answer. And I certainly wasn't thinking about it in any kind of studious context. I just thought it was very cool, which probably proves that I wasn't cool.
But I mean, it's paradoxically, you're looking at a sort of freshness, really.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I always say about cinema, silent cinema, is that I don't love it because it's old. I love it because it's so new. You know, everyone's trying new things all the time. Sometimes they really don't work, and sometimes it's really exciting. You see people realising that they can move the camera in this way, or that they can, you know, change the focus and the stage scenes in different ways. But sometimes it's the odd little clunky bits that I love too. But yeah, you see people like inventing an art form in front of you, and what is not to love?
One of the things I always like talking about the clunky bits is whenever I'm watching a silent movie and there's a bit where they're indoors and you can see there's an obvious wind that shouldn't be indoors blowing the things at the I don't know, the napkins on the table or something. And I just love that you know they're filming probably without a roof so they can use all the available light. It's just such a funny sort of like, yeah, I can imagine the camera pulling back away from the camera and there's a wall and a beach or something behind them.
Yeah, I mean, and you hit on like a really important point, because one of the things that's happening in the early days of film is people are stopping treating it like theatre, when you totally accept a certain amount of artifice and a painted backdrop and the fact that they're all going to sit in one line on one stage and they're not going to move, and realising that they have to have more realism and they can have more dynamism, you know, that they can move around in different ways. So you see everyone working this out in different ways. And one of the things that people often ask about the outdoor shooting is obviously because there isn't much light. So quite often films have these, it's not a very complex code, but a code of tinting, coloured scenes. So you take that same shot and you wash it blue to make people know it's at night, or you wash it in kind of amber glow to show it's daylight, you know, by contrast. And people say, is that original or is that something added? And it's like, yeah, no, they tried that. Like, they did. I mean, it sounds sort of quite simplistic and naive, but yeah, people thought, great, let's just dip the film in some blue dye, and it works. You know, it tells you everything you need to know. It's not as sophisticated as when you have better polychromatic film stocks and better, more sophisticated studio lighting. Yeah, that is officially better. But the sort of sense that people are like making up how a film is going to look, because a film could have been anything, you know, it was an invention without a future, you know, it could have just been actualities, it could have just been realism all the way, you know, and then, you know, Alice Guy Blaché was like, maybe we could have a story about fairy, and suddenly you're like, well, no, maybe cinema can be adventurous, exciting costumes, sets, you know, everything that we now think of it as being. And it's still also the same device that, you know, you have a little screen on your dashboard of your car to show you what the back of your car looks like, so you can park, like the most mundane use of the moving image in the history of the world. It's all the same, you know, it's that, and it's in the Heights.
I get the train, and there's occasionally they've got little TV screens showing you what's happening at the entrance of the, you know, where people get on and get off of the train. And so if the train's crowded and people are standing there, you're just watching, you know, people checking their phones, picking their noses, and it's a perfect sort of people watching device. People
watching device. I mean, that's exactly what it is. And I remember, so after sort of being this sort of hapless teenager stumbling around the BFI thinking I might go watch some Max Linder films, I, went to university and became a bit more of a film nerd. And then I did a postgraduate degree in film history, or the history of film and visual media, which sounds very fancy.
The syntax makes it sound much more, swapping around getting rid of the Anglo-Saxon genitive.
I love it. I could tell people that I've got a master's in art history. I would be lying. But one of the most, obviously, great course, great lecturers, brilliant stuff. We sort of focused on technological innovations. And we talked a lot about early film. And one of the things that was said that was most sort of powerful to me is Laura Mulvey, who obviously is a genius, talking about the film, which you've probably seen, I don't know if you know it, A Train Leaving Jerusalem Station.
Yeah.
Right. She said, this is one of my favourite films. I just love it. And I think that's what gave me permission, in a way. My brain just clicked, you are just allowed to be enjoying these things, because the train leaving Jerusalem Station is just what you're saying about your train. You're watching people and they're all lined up. They've all got some connection to the train that's leaving. They're lined up literally according to class, because it's a train platform, and you see children's faces, and you see people who are in a state of emotional excitement, and you're just watching people. And yeah, that is a beautiful film. There are people who will just say it's a demonstration of a certain technical invention, but I'm with Mulvey on this, as on many other things. It's just a really enjoyable film, and I do quite like a little bit of Victorian and early 20th century cinema, though you don't often get asked to talk about it. Maybe I should stop talking about it now.
I'm interested in the idea of cinema being like a time machine, because when I grew up, a lot of the people were still alive. Cary Grant was still alive, Elvis was still alive. A lot of those old Robert Mitchum, all those movie stars were still among us. Now they're almost all gone, those names, and the silent stars even more so. And then going further back, well, obviously, so there is a weird sort of time travel aspect to it, which I find utterly compelling.
We're all going to run the risk of seeing our great-grandfathers and great-grandmothers, great in these films, and you wouldn't know, almost, that's the thing. But you can see these footage of like places where you live, and I know the town that I'm from in the northwest of England, like I've looked it up, on the BFI player, and I've found, what's happening at their Easter parades in, years gone by, and it's wonderful, because you think, these are people who walk down the same streets as me, even if they're not related to me. I mean, obviously, you have things like the Battle of the Somme, where we've all got, many of us have got ancestors who were there, and it's such a momentous occasion. But yeah, I think it would be naive to think that only these films are time capsules. Everything is, everything is. When you look at, this is such a banal way of putting it, but if you look at the actress's eyebrows in any costume drama, you know exactly what period it was made in. And if you look at the way that they write the storyline and how men and women behave to each other, then you also know. And so, every film is a time capsule. It's just like some of these ones that are very pure about it, very pure about showing you.
Yeah, what was the first film that you going back to that 17-year-old girl, what was that first film that you thought, right, this is, where you really got that spark of this is really for me, I like this?
Do you know what, I don't remember something from when I was that age. I remember something from when I was much younger, watching on like half-term afternoon films with my mum, and I remember watching David Lean's Great Expectations.
Right.
And I suppose I had the idea we were talking about earlier about films just filming the dialogue from books in front of stage sets in my head, because I was only a kid. And then I watched the opening sequence of that, the camera roams around them, was beautiful. And it just clicked in my head. Oh, the camera's telling the story. And then just from then point on, I think whenever I watched a film, I was like, what is being shown to me that isn't just the fact that someone's come in to the room and said, your father's dying, you must get the coach to whatever, and that's the thing that really intrigued me. What else am I being told? I suppose it's just like enjoying the language in a book. I was quite a bookish child.
So yeah, it's the grammar of the camera movements and being a part of the story of that. You put a link on the email when we were sort of going back and forth about the time for a film called Suspense.
It's Lois Weber is the name of the director.
You have to excuse my ignorance. My silent knowledge is limited, I would say. I think it would be fair. I've probably seen more than most people, but certainly not enough to in any way consider myself. So I'm looking forward to being educated. Anyway, seeing Suspense. Wow, what about that film? I mean, there's camera angles there. There's the use of the sort of the rear view mirror of a car. There's the cut of the triangle sort of CND sign where you have all the 3 images.
Split screen.
Yeah, split screen. That's the word I'm looking for. That's amazing. What an amazing movie. It reminded me a bit of Fritz Lang in there as well, a bit of Spionen.
Yeah. So Suspense is a home invasion thriller, a film. It's the format that being made. I sent you that because you told me you were quite familiar with D.W. Griffith's features, like the big features.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. It's like, it's not interesting or radical or cool anymore to say, oh, do you know what? D.W. Griffith isn't everything. Because I don't think anyone is being taught that anymore. And if they are, They probably need to change at school. But, there is more to cinema than that. And Suspense by Lois Weber is a sort of 10-minute film from 1913, which sort of does all these things that we've been taught about Griffiths and the development of cinema, and it all being about cross-cutting. But there's cross-cutting in there. But there's also like 8 other different tricks she does with the frame. She shows you the invader coming to the house from such a high angle, which in itself just looks so wicked cool. Like, it looks brilliant. You're like, wow. But of course, what she's showing you there is the perspective of the woman in the house. She's not showing you a suffering damsel in distress. She's showing you what it feels like to be the woman in the house. And of course, she's playing the woman too. So we have this film that is just so exciting and so thrilling and such a wow moment. And also, it's just slipping the female gaze into there as well. And, I just like to show people that because in, 10 minutes, you suddenly got excited about transitional cinema. And the fact that I'm calling it transitional cinema makes it sound really tedious. But, this is how we get to the features. You don't get to, literally trying to think of a film that came out recently, you don't get to Dunkirk without having, the development of the thriller and all these devices. Trying to think of a big, big film, but of course they all, they're all on hold. You don't get No Time to Die.
Yeah. Godzilla versus Kong.
Godzilla versus Kong, which I fell asleep in front of, and now I'm really sleep is good for you.
I think you're absolutely right, and that's another. I think was it Jeff Dyer or someone? There was somebody who wrote about sort of falling asleep in a film as kind of part of the appreciation of a movie. That there are some films that actually helps, not just in a sort of snidey, oh, that was boring, but in a sort of like actually coming in and out of the, I don't know. A David Lynch film, sleep could be quite complementary to the experience, or nightmarish.
Yeah, that could be awful. I took my partner to see a screening of Decasia, the Bill Morrison film that's made up of lots of snatches of film, suffering badly from nitrate decomp. I can't believe he's still married to me, quite frankly. He fell asleep in that, had witty dreams. He would not agree. But I do agree that sometimes it can be quite good to be a tiny bit bored in a film. Good for you as a critic, because you have to look at something else. When I talk about a film like The Train Leaving Jerusalem Station or this kind of thing, it's really good, like, critical practice to look at a film. And of course, your first thought would to say, what happens in the film? Well, the train just leaves the station. But of course, if you force yourself to try and describe what's going on, you find all the riches. And I'm sure every film would benefit from this, But what exactly is going on at any one moment? I think that it's the way to learn how to be a proper critic, because the thing I can't bear, I think I might have said this once already about something else that I can't bear. The thing that is mildly annoying to me is when people say, "Oh, I didn't like that film. It's basically this." It's like, we're basically nothing. Like, we're all basic if you basic us. Like, tell me what's extra in there. Tell me what's on top of the basic. Yeah, the boy met the girl, I know, but come on. What kind of shoes was he wearing?
Shoes.
Everything is interesting, and well, the silent film nerd would maybe say that, but yeah, everything is interesting and everything's there for a reason, and if it wasn't put in there for a reason, it's still part of the film. So we always have this with early film, the dog. There's always a dog that just strays into the path. One of the ways where you can describe like the development of film narrative, you can talk about editing, you can talk about shot construction and scenes and all this kind of thing. You can also talk about the point when the dog was in there for a reason. Like Rescued by Rover.
That's also like how I think it's getting away from the idea of film as purely or primarily a narrative form. It's like there are so many films that I really, really love that it's like the story is the least interesting part of the movie. It's that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for the mood. Yeah. I'm here for the, whatever. But
Ozzy said plot bores me. And with Ozzy, like, it's right. There are some films where the plot is quite exciting, it's true to say. But very often, it's everything else that happens in that. Every love story ever, it's about what's happening between two people on screen and the obstacles in their path. It's not about the idea that two people want to get together and procreate rather badly. Like, you shouldn't reduce anything to the bare bones of narrative. Some films don't even have to have a narrative. One of the last films I went to see before lockdown, was colour correction.
I haven't seen that.
People were walking out in horror. It was at a festival in Paris. It's the film, I can't remember the name of the director, where it's just the colour correction reel from a 90-minute movie. So there's no plot, there's no narrative, there's no audio, there's no scenes, there's no faces. It's just the colour changing ever so slightly for 90 minutes. And you have to find a way to engage with it or just walk out.
Well, I mean, walking out is a way of engaging in it. I mean, it's like, was it Haneke who said, people who walk out of my films don't need them? The people who stay are the people who are like me are pretty sick. And, well, I'm adding this last bit, but I guess that's what he meant.
It's true. And I have to say, that was a really interesting screening. And I wish my French was a little better. There were definitely people who were checking their phone and there were people who were sleeping. Now, those people, I mean, they should have gone to a cafe, really, in Paris, for God's sake. But someone got up and stood at the top of the stairs just by the door and screamed at us all, saying we were fools to stay. I'm pretty sure he said, he said whatever the French equivalent is of, the emperor has no clothes. And if you don't even ask yourself that question when you're watching a film, is there a point in watching this? I suppose you're not engaging. Obviously, that was very rude. And I think the filmmaker was in attendance. So I'm not encouraging that. But that was my experience of watching the film. Of deciding in that moment, well, even though he's called me an imbecile, I'm going to stay. In fact, that's probably my experience of watching a lot of films. Even if someone's going to call me an imbecile, I'm going to stay.
Yeah, I find it difficult to walk out of movies. I really do. Although, at festivals, sometimes it's just necessary to save your sanity.
I once walked out of something at Pordenone and I felt so bad about walking out of it. I had to get myself really worked up and quite angry about the reason why I was going to walk out. So I sort of stood up and went, under my breath, I just can't take it anymore, and left. And I completely understand why I could have got something from staying. But at that point, I just didn't need to see another racist early Western.
Right.
I'd seen a few, and I think I'd got the gist of the Mexicans being the bad guys at that point. And I know I was told I missed out on great things, but that was just my moment then. It's not something I make a habit of doing.
Yeah, I mean, I like in Venice in particular, the film festival there's a tendency to sort of shout something at the end of the screening. And sometimes it can be, there was one time it was pretty disgusting because I think it was The Nightingale that someone shouted out something quite offensive. But usually it's sort of, it's always a sentence, it's always, this guy is a complete fraud or something like that. It's never, so you can tell the person who's shouting it out, it's not really spontaneous. They've had a think during the film. I'm going to shout out at this one. What am I going to say? And so, and there's a bit of me, I have this sort of attraction, repulsion to that kind of behaviour. There's the English part of me that goes, no, you really shouldn't do that. It's really rude. And then there's the Irish part of me that goes, excellent.
You know that there are people in any festival screening, or probably lots of screenings that you go to, who are thinking, what's the pithy thing I'm going to put on Letterboxd, or what am I going to tweet about this film? Maybe he's just being more honest if he screams it out loud. Yeah, it's not polite behaviour, and I do like being polite. It's a terrible problem being a critic when you sort of think that it's really politest to keep one's opinions to oneself.
But it depends what type of critic, because critic doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be negative and lambast people. It can be someone who's trying to celebrate stuff and be constructive.
I'm lucky in that I'm not a week of release critic, so I get to review lots of new films. I get to talk about lots of old films that obviously have their problems, but I don't feel compelled to watch every little thing and offer an opinion on it, and therefore I can often be quite constructive. I mean, sometimes I'm so sick of people saying things are good or bad. I would kill for a proper description of what was in the film, and I don't mean the plot, obviously.
Yeah, again, do you like it or not is often the least interesting question. It's sort of like, well, why didn't you like it? Not if you liked it or disliked.
I never ask myself, am I enjoying this? Do I like this? Because believe me, if the film's really bad, that opinion will come to you. Sort of halfway through the film, you say, God, no. But what's wonderful sometimes is when you're halfway through watching a film and you just get that feeling of joy. You're just like, this is just beautifully made. I felt like that when I watched Nomadland at home, and I felt like that double when I watched it at the cinema again recently, just to pick a really recent example. It very often happens to me with a silent film. But yeah, I just thought, you could discuss many aspects of this film, but I am enjoying this beautiful filmmaking, and I'm admiring it, and I'm engaging with it, and I'm learning something about the world, and just just that feeling is probably why you keep going back to the cinema.
There's a moment when you can get quite tired of cinema at times, when you can feel, I've seen, as you say, I've seen enough racist films, or I've seen enough whatever, you know, the trope of the time is, and then you see that film that just kicks, you know, absolutely kicks you up the arse, and in a great way. What you went into film sort of academically as well then with your
I did a master's degree, but I was working at a DVD magazine at the time, and after that I went and worked as a newspaper journalist. So I've never been an academic, but because I work on such old films, I sort of end up being sort of dragged into a sort of semi-academic space sometimes, which is really embarrassing because I'm not, because I don't have a PhD and because I can't write that way. Even when I was doing my degrees, that would always come back, you're not writing in an academic way. So, but yeah, so I do end up doing things that are a little bit more research-based, or working with people at universities and doing a bit of teaching. But I'm just a hack, John.
Oh, cool. Oh, good. Game recognises game. Because when I went to university, I went to Liverpool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Where are you from in the northwest, by the way?
I'm from Birkenhead.
Oh, right. Okay, right across the water then. Brilliant. So when I went to university, I was doing my degree there in literature. And there was a guy called Jeff Ward. He was there, and he was doing this sort of film course, like an elective. And it had everything that I wanted. It was Cronenberg. It was, you know, and this was early 90s. And it was amazing, looked amazing. And I didn't take it because I just thought, I'm going to do that anyway. But I'm never going to read Chaucer. So I'm going to read Chaucer. You know, I need to be forced to read Chaucer. Whereas I've always had this slight quantum leap moment where my life sort of went into, you know, I imagined, what if I'd gone on that knife edge and I'd gone into sort of academic more. And when I started writing for academic sort of film journals, doing book reviews. That was my first, just because for some reason, the majesty of the written word was this, you know, it's been something I haven't been able to shake off. And still, you know, even doing this podcast about books on film, so it continues to this day. All right, so your relationship isn't as academic as your online presence would suggest, madam.
Well, I think having an online presence is very academic. I don't know. I'm not. In case anybody who doesn't know me is listening to this, I do not have any false credentials listed on my website or on my Twitter bio. I think people just assume because it's old, you must be writing this like pontificating, or just very much more rigorous. I'm writing criticism. I'm doing history. Like the first time Radio 4 called me a film historian, I sort of went, ooh. But actually, yeah, I'm doing some history, and writing the Pandora's Box book was that. But I must be a wee bit younger than you. When I went to apply to university, I considered doing film studies, or even like an English and film studies mix. And I was very, very, very heavily advised not to do that because I was good enough to do English and this would be a lesser degree. And I hope that that's not the case, you know, with people anymore. I mean, I'm delighted. I read Chaucer. I quite liked it. Liked reading Chaucer and Old English, you know. But, you know, and I think that my literary studies, like, it does influence you. I'm really interested in adaptation and working on an adaptation project now. But also, one of the things my course did was it made you go right back to the beginning. So we did, you know, I had to translate Old English. And I suppose I sort of carry on that rigor. I'm like, well, let's talk about Jaws later. First, we have to talk about Georges Méliès. You know, I still have that kind of attitude in my head of like, you should have gone back and done the reading from the earlier part of the course, like the full syllabus. But yeah, I'm sorry if I've been masquerading myself as an intellectual.
No, not at all. No, it was actually that phrase, film historian, that just led to my assumption. But I thought that sounds like a brilliant name for a book, from Jaws to Georges Méliès.
Do you know what? That would be amazing, actually. Yeah. Or maybe just on, what would we call them, sort of analog prop making. Just like the best, you know, because he always had all these wonderful like things that he'd created in his studio. So, you know, and we're all over pixels, aren't we? So go back to sort of real world props and write from Georges to Jaws.
Let's talk a bit about the Pandora's Box film, because it's a film that I had, and your BFI book, and I'm so jealous of you doing that book. Not jealous, what's the word? I'm in awe of you, because when I was doing my, I carried on in academia for far too long, and when I was still there...
Well, you're a doctor.
Yeah, I am Dr. Johnny, which it only is the only effect it has on my life is my mum addresses all my Christmas cards Dr. John Cleasdale, and my Twitter handle. That's the only impact it's had on my entire 4 years well spent. I think we can all agree.
You know, a wise woman would like do your degree. She said this. She was talking about bachelor's degree. She said,
"Sure,
you know, it might not help your life, but when you pull the push handle, you'll remind yourself, I'm clever. I've got a degree." So a PhD, you can breeze past any social gaffe with that.
I just walk into glass doors constantly.
And this is where we get to slapstick.
Exactly. Oh, nice segue. No, wait a second. Let's do Pandora's Box first. But I do want to talk about comedy and slapstick as well. But the reason I was in awe of you in terms of the authorship of a BFI Classics book, because those were I had a study room in the library. And I was doing Shelley and laughter and the theory of laughter and Henri Bergson and all this stuff. And it was great. I enjoyed it. But my break was to go to the cinema section, and they had a big collection of BFI classics, and just nab one at random and read it. And, and it would take me an hour to read or whatever. And it just felt like, oh, now I can go back to work. And it's just brilliant. So I really loved your book, and I really loved that sort of application. But Pandora's Box, why was that something that you were sort of assigned, or did you pitch it? Is that, and if so, why?
Okay, I'm deciding here how honest to be. How many people listen to this? Like millions, right?
Oh,
okay.
Literally nobody.
So I'm often drawn to things that are a bit too difficult for me, is a problem that I have. But yeah, so I was introduced to a person who had commissioning power, and someone said, this is Pamela and she should probably do one of your books, which obviously isn't the job done. And she said, well, what would you do then? And I think she sort of said something like, oh, it would be great to get more silent films or something. And I just knew, because like you, I was a fan of the series. I knew what was missing, as it were. So I said, oh, someone's got to do Pandora's Box. Now, just in case anybody is thinking terrible things, I did have to go away and do a full book proposal and all that kind of thing. In fact, my old tutor said to me she would forgive me for not doing my PhD if I did the book. So it's what I did instead, and it's not as rigorous as a PhD. But I thought that this was a film that was really interesting, and it's a really complex and confusing film. I think the first time I watched it, I was very confused by a lot of things. Also, not too much is out there about its production, partly because it was a flop, that's just as easy as it gets, and partly because I felt that while there is some great writing on this film, there are some things that just repeat the same things again, and a lot of people are quite taken with the feelings that they have when they watch Louise Brooks. And this wasn't really a problem for me. I think she's marvellous, but there we go. So I just thought it'd be interesting. This is a female-led film. Louise Brooks was one of the most fascinating people in film history, like absolute legend, and wrote great film history. Always wonderful. I thought, let's just give this film a fair shake down and shake through and see what falls out of it, really. Then I had to write the damn thing.
The tough part. How long did it take you? Was it a long ride?
Oh, you don't want to know this. It took me about 5 weeks. So basically, I quit my job for other reasons, and so I wrote this book in 5 weeks. Obviously, all the research had been done while I was working full-time separately, but the writing of it didn't. I suppose that's not long, but it seems now I look at it and think, 5 weeks work? It's only thin.
And lots of pictures.
Lots of pictures, nice big font. I didn't have to do an index. It was an absolute doddle. I did do the slightly cheating thing of there's some material towards the beginning that takes the film different angles, but then I did go act by act. But that's because the acts are quite separate in this film. Right. I thought it was actually quite useful to go act by act. But of course, that means you just basically get to write 8 different essays on the film, rather than something that sort of accumulates and accumulates. But yeah, absolute joy to work on. The film is so fascinating. I managed to dig in and find some things that people hadn't found or hadn't written down if they had. So yeah, I thoroughly recommend digging your nose into the most complicated film you can think of.
One of the things I loved about that film was I'm not sure if loved is the right word, but it's the thing that Jack the Ripper turns up. And it just feels like such a strange sort of, it's got that moralistic thing going on, and it's got a lot of, the life, the life of the uncontrolled, free, independent, etc. And then you have this really creepy ending that just kind of darkens everything. I really enjoyed that. Again, I keep saying liked and enjoyed, and those aren't the right words exactly. I appreciated it, let's say that.
there are people who still have a real problem with that. I mean, it's hard. It doesn't make sense. We want to see her do well. And if something bad is going to happen to her, you think it's going to follow on naturally. But of course, once you've seen the film, and this is terrible spoilers, you realise the whole point of the film is that she's always going to get murdered by a sex maniac, that's her fate. And that's horrific. If you think the film is a bit grim, you should read the play.
Oh, right.
It's very gruesome and much more explicit about the idea that this is, what's happening. I mean, Louise Brooks is like you. She's sick. Sorry, I mean, like Hanukkah. And she embraced the ending fully. I don't mean that about you. Just, it was off your comment. She embraced the ending fully. She said it should have been more gory, knife in the vagina, all that kind of thing. She really, really thought that, it was wonderful. And it's interesting, it's meant to be this moment, this thing that she sort of thought would happen to her, Lulu thought would happen to her. And the way Brooks says it is something like, the moment she's always dreamed of, which is has a very different interpretation to it. It is a sort of slightly baffling film. People come and go without any sort of explanation. And Jack the Ripper is just, one of the biggest surprises in film history. I think the fact that he just turns up conveniently there to sort of take her away, take this sort of free radical out of society. I definitely did not like the ending the first time I saw it.
That ending feels like it's replicated in very recent films as well. I mean, I haven't seen it, but I have read a detailed plot synopsis because I'm weird. But Promising Young Woman, I think, has feels to me, at least from what I've read, has a similar kind of this is terrible, but what were you expecting, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I have watched Promising Young Woman,
okay,
and I wouldn't spoil it for you, except you've read it. But the moment when she is being murdered, you go through so many emotions because you think, oh no, he's really strangling her quite heavily. But you just are convinced that she's got to survive because she is the protagonist, because she's got this mission, because she has this slightly righteous mission. It's also a terrible sort of negative obsession for her, of course. But yeah, you can't believe that she's actually going to die. And then she dies. And then the suggestion is that she was quite sure she would, and she was quite accepting of that fact. And I mean, there are many ways in which this is quite worrying as films go, because we see so many films where women get murdered that a lot of people are a bit like, did you need to make another one? I can understand that. That's one of the reasons why I got a bit upset when I first watched Pandora's Box, much like when I was quite young and I watched Vertigo. I was livid, absolutely livid. I'd gone all the way through this film for that. And of course, there's more to the film than the plot.
And more to the plot than the ending, although the ending always seems to have this huge... Yeah, it can sort of... It can save or it can destroy a film. And I don't think that's just sort of recency bias. I think there's a capstone. If you were sort of like... If somebody hasn't watched Pandora's Box and you were to... What?
No, because I was like, I wouldn't say Jack the Ripper is what I wouldn't say.
You see, I would. I'd say that ending is... That's the thing. I kind of, in a way, a weird ending like that is kind of just so interesting. I could totally understand why it doesn't work necessarily. The Deus Ex Machina just sort of wanders in.
Slasher Ex Machina. Is that right?
Slasher Ex Machina. But if you were to sort of like say to someone who hasn't watched many silent movies, what in particular about Pandora's Box make it the one that you suggested for the BFI book series, classic series? What is your motivation for that choice?
I mean, my motivation is almost entirely Louise Brooks,
right.
And wanting. We have with Pandora's Box, we have this fascinating and very rare situation where the leading account of the making of the film is given to us by the leading lady. This is so rare. It's like almost people forget who directed it. I mean, now, so immediately you have two questions. You have, well, let's find out what the director thought he was making. And let's go into that a bit more. But also you have to sort of interrogate this amazing account we have of making the film, which is an account from a young woman, very young, who didn't speak the language of anyone else on set, who was drinking quite heavily and was away from home for the first time. So it's not necessarily the most reliable account ever. So to me, there were just lots of big questions about it. I think that the film is weird and complicated and is best understood if you've read the Vader-King play that it's based on, which is completely palindromic, so that sort of makes sense of the ending in some ways, but that's not how people encounter it. And there's still something just precious about the fact that people go to the cinema because
Hey, it's Mark Maron from WTF, here to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. And I'm sure the reason you're listening to this podcast right now is because you chose it. Well, choose Progressive's Name Your Price tool, and you could find insurance options that fit your budget, so you can pick the best one for your situation. Who doesn't like choice? Try it at Progressive.com. And now, some legal info. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Beautiful woman, the beautiful, fascinating woman in the film. And you can watch that whole film and almost not notice the plot because she is so captivating and she isn't like anyone else that you see in the films. You can't call her a flapper, you can't call her a vamp. She's completely different, even though we can then go into like Lola in The Blue Angel and sort of various characters that are similar. You don't get many Lulus. When I was writing the book, or working on it, or quitting my job to write the book, I had to tell friends who didn't have any interest in silent cinema what I was doing, and they said, "What's the film like?" And you say, "Oh God, this is a really hard question." And I say it's like an erotic thriller. It's an erotic thriller, but from the 1920s, because it has that something about it. You know that it's going to be deadly and dangerous and really licentious and hedonistic in many ways. And who doesn't want to watch a 1929 erotic thriller?
You've sold it, yeah. So we've got Jaws to Georges Méliès. We've got Pandora's Box to Basic Instinct.
I would start before with the vamp films. I'd start with Asta Nielsen in Denmark in 1911. But yeah, you definitely, the roots of the erotic thriller are deep, deep, deep in these really dangerous and sexy and dark, violent films that were made in the silent era. They loved a bit of that, and then we sort of got a bit more, after the code came in, we got a bit more prudish.
You see, that's the difference between you and me, because I would have gone back to The Wife of Bath. I would have gone right the way back. Again, another tale of rape and violence and sex being linked. And
has there been a good film version of Canterbury Tales?
Pasolini.
Oh yes, of course. I haven't seen it, but yes.
Yeah, I think his sensibility actually kind of matches Chaucer. That sort of, he's got a weird medieval sensibilities. Growing up in Catholic post-war Italy. So yeah, I think it works. It's got Tom Baker in it as well, which is always, and I think he does full frontal nudity as well. So you got Doctor Who.
Oh, sorry, I'm just nipping off to watch a film.
I've sold it to you, haven't I?
Yeah, adaptation is really interesting. If you get something like The Wife of Bath, which, well, just Canterbury Tales anyway, it doesn't lend itself to a 90-minute movie. Most books and plays don't lend themselves to a 90-minute movie. So there's so many choices about what you leave in and take out. The idea of doing the Canterbury Tales is very perverse and, well, it's pure entertainment, so why not?
Yeah, and I think Pasolini was on a bit of a run of doing like literary adaptations, and he did the Decameron, which of course is influenced the Canterbury Tales. Basically, Canterbury Tales is a riffing on the Decameron. And what else did he do? He did Oedipus Rex, and then of course he did his Bible film, his Gospel According to St. Matthew. And so yeah, I think there's a sense that Pasolini's just sort of ticking off a bunch of his things, but he's always choosing the things which really match his own sensibility, so he can do his own thing. There's plenty of sex in there, and there's some of these bigger issues. I really enjoy those movies. I think they're some of Pasolini's best work.
I can't believe I'm saying this to someone based in Italy, but I haven't seen much Pasolini. I should rectify that. I watch a lot of Italian silent cinema, but Italian silent cinema, but I'm a bit ignorant when it gets later, sort of past Cabiria.
The one I'd recommend, I think, is a really interesting place to start. Maybe would be Theorem, the Teorema, the one he did with Terence Stamp. There was this craze in the early '60s, late '50s to always in Italian cinema to have one major English-speaking star, even if the whole film will be dubbed into Italian anyway. So you have Richard Harris in Red Desert, and you have Terence Stamp in this one, and Dario Argento has David Hemmings in Fondo Rosso, and so there's something to be said for that. And Clint Eastwood in Fistful of Dollars, with surrounded by Italians.
Not the star, but it's Barbara Steele, Birkenhead Hometown Hero. Yeah, she did a bit of Italy.
Oh, she did a load of Mario Bava films and
Fellini.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Anita Ekberg in La Dolce Vita as well, although she's not in that much of it, but she burns a hole in the screen so that everybody becomes the thing that everybody remembers about the movie.
And this is not to just be that person, but this brings us back to Pandora's Box. There's this whole thing about having this American starlet come in and take the lead in your arty German literary film. Why not? I mean, she wasn't even a star. She was someone who wasn't making it big in the Hollywood studio system because she didn't like doing what she was told. She had her photograph in the magazines, but she didn't have this amazing CV of starring roles. And then you put her in an adaptation of one of the nation's favourite plays. Amazing shock tactic casting.
It is so funny how casting runs along those similar lines so early on as well. It's that is something I would think of more as a post-war thing, but absolutely.
Well, you get it a lot in the silent era because of the obvious no language difficulties, and then you get people like Anna May Wong who came to Europe because in Europe people would cast her as the leading lady, but because of sort of prohibition against what they called miscegenation, you couldn't do that in America. So she had the most terrible roles over there, and she came over here and she made some beautiful German and British films. And it was really sad. I don't want to be, a cliche of myself, but it was quite sad for a lot of people when sound came in. It did make things a lot less exciting, when it comes to that, because dubbing is not the same.
Yeah, there's a notable sort of sense of loss. This brings me to, because I wanted to talk a little bit about probably the most enduring films of the silent era, which I would argue are the comedies, the Chaplin and the Keaton and the Harold Lloyd and
Mabel Normand.
Yes, Mabel Normand, of course. I was talking to Helen O'Hara about Mabel Normand and how she should have a film about her. What a wonderful story. And we have how many films about Orson Welles? We have nothing about people like Mabel Normand.
I mean, I love the comedies. I have to say that comedy probably isn't my favourite genre, and sort of accidentally, by having a blog and being asked to talk about silent cinema a lot, I've been forced to give these slapstick comedies more of my attention than I maybe otherwise would have done. Of course, they are brilliant. It's just pure cinema when you see Buster Keaton enact a stunt. Watching some of these films were one of the reasons why I realised that I was going to love and enjoy silent cinema, not just find it interesting. They are brilliant. But one of the questions that people often ask me is, because they know I write about women's film history, they say, is there an equivalent to Charlie Chaplin, a female equivalent? And then you really disappoint them because you say, yeah, there was. But of course, no one gave her a studio, In fact, she got treated quite abysmally and then also forgotten. And then Charlie Chaplin gets to write in his autobiography that he didn't think she was any good and wouldn't let her direct him and all this kind of thing. So you there isn't an equivalent, because the great stories of the great slapstick comedians is the freedom they had and the sort of control they had. I mean, I'm not suggesting, I'm not trying to do anyone's career down. I'm just saying, when you watch a Buster Keaton film, you watch the great ones, you watch someone who's been able to control everything and really come up with his conception of what's going to look exciting on film the whole way through. I mean, it is just a joy to watch. And yeah, I would like to see a film about Mabel Normand, but I also just get so angry when I think about her.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that there's an injustice obviously to the individual historically, and then there's an injustice to audiences because we've been deprived of a broader sense of comedy and who is out there doing this stuff,
Alice Guy Blaché made amazing comedies. She made a film which I often show to people, often show to students. See how I am masquerading as an intellectual again. She made a film called Madam's Cravings, which is it's kind of a chase film, very popular at the time. But what's chasing? It's a pregnant woman who's got cravings, so she wanders around eating things, stealing things she shouldn't eat. And so you have interspersed people with this chase where people are chasing her saying, why did you steal my cigar, my herring, whatever, my baby's bottle, I think at some point. But you have interspersed these amazing, what we call facial comedy, and like the close-ups of her gurning with pleasure as she's eating. This is like the picture of a woman who is very funny, but also we're just showing like female desire on the screen in the biggest close-up that you could ever see. There are some great female-led, female-directed comedies. There's one called Daisy Doodag's Dial, which is a British film, which is, really funny, all about close-ups and funny faces. But they're not shown enough. They're not talked about enough. Also, there aren't as many, because there aren't as many people who had, as many women people who had that opportunity. When you see it, you sort of feel like you've stumbled across something you're not meant to see, to be honest. I'm not suggesting anything against your slapstick heroes, who are obviously great filmmakers. Did you notice in the trailer, this film won't come out yet, but the trailer for Last Night in Soho, the two actresses do the gag that's quite popular from the Marx Brothers film, the gag in the mirror. But that goes back to the silent era. People were doing that in various different comedies beforehand. And I love seeing how a gag can go from one comedian to another comedian, and then in this case to a horror film. Wonderful stuff. This sort of repertoire of physical comedy is very exciting. And it also, well, this is me being a bit cheeky, but it kind of betrays this idea about tourism, because as soon as you've got a slapstick performer, the script is going to say fall over, but what's clever is how they do it, really.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is on the performer alone. Like, not always, there will be situations where the director has worked it out, where the director is the performer. But yeah, you see people taking something from the stage that maybe their grandfathers might have watched, reworking it, and it gets reworked every generation. And now it's in a horror movie trailer. Hopefully it's in the actual film, but you never know.
No, well, that is true. From between cup and lip, there's many a slip. Same thing from trailer to, it doesn't rhyme, but you get the idea. There were female Keystone Cops as well, weren't there?
Well, I mean, but Mabel Normand was at Keystone, yeah, and there were also what they were called the Bathing Beauties, who, Carole Lombard, for example, learned a lot of her physical comedy while she was in that slightly less than glamorous role, really. I mean, it's not really a great idea. It's not a really great role to have, the Bathing Beauty, but she did get to learn to punch and kick, and then you see her on a train with John Barrymore doing her Max Sennett.
And you get Helen Gibson in one of the longest running movie series that happened. So, I mean, not only were there performers out there was obviously an audience for this, because that was hugely popular.
Yeah, I mean, at the time we were recording this, I had an article out on a British newspaper earlier this week about Thelma and Louise, and because it's 30 years old, love that film, who doesn't love that film? I scrapped a whole paragraph because I thought I was getting too nerdy for the newspaper. Maybe I shouldn't have done it, which was just to say, and if you want to see women doing stunts and having adventures and go out in the deserts of America, yeah, you can probably go back to the silent era. But nothing that they do in that film, is different from the serial queens like Helen Gibson, Exploits of Elaine and all this kind of thing. There's fun to be found in the silent era. It's a fun time.
The more you repeat the word fun, the worse it sounds, though. You gotta be, come have chemistry can be fun. That's it's like a Simpson.
If I was an academic, I'd be there at like Freshers Week saying, sign up for the fun silent cinema module. People have preconceptions about everything. I think people have preconceptions if you talk to them about Pasolini, that it's going to be not enjoyable, that it's going to be fearsome, that you have to have understood all these old books. And people have preconceptions about the silent era, that it won't move them in the same way that a more recent film will. So it won't be fun, it won't be sexy, it won't be thrilling. And obviously that you have to make allowances for decades and decades, but there is so much pleasure to be found in these films, and none of us would be talking about these films. Well, no, there are people I know who are interested in talking about shot length and frame rates. Great. That's not where I come in. That's why I'm more of a critic than a historian. I like some pleasure. Thank you. Or at least something to engage my brain.
Talking about pleasure, we do a film club at the university, and it's essentially just an opportunity for me to try to inculcate my favourite films onto people as if that's the new canon. And they're predominantly young women, predominantly from 19 to 24, 25. And we did a double bill of Sherlock Jr. and City Lights, and they all loved Buster Keaton. They loved, and they liked City Lights. They thought that was great. But the Sherlock Jr., they were like, it was this shock that it was like, okay, I sat down to watch it and I thought, okay, John's trying to, drag us into something, and then they just sort of loved it. And I've never seen them so enthusiastic. One of them was saying, this is one of my top 3 films now. 19 to 20 odd years old. They're interested in movies. They want to come to the film club, but I didn't need to persuade them. I think maybe when you were talking earlier about sort of, okay, there's some resistance maybe about talking about these particular films that are a little bit outside of what you're interested in, but also, as a critic, personally, I find it difficult to write about these films just because why do you need to write about them? Just watch them. They're just, you know what I mean? There's no sense that they need explaining or in any way. I mean, I'm sure there's some great writing out there about Keaton and Chaplin, obviously.
My gosh.
I've read a lot of it.
Wonderful writing, all by me. No, the voices in my head that talking. But, you can talk about Sherlock Jr. as, meta cinema. You can talk about how the surrealists really appreciated it. And you can also talk about how great it is when he goes straight through the fence of the motorbike. I think you can engage with that film on so many levels. You can't maybe engage with it as regards to social issues it's pushing or something like that. But you can, I think that we can describe it. I think that we can talk about what it tells you about his art. I know it tells you about how cinema was seen at the time, and what it tells you a bit about, you were just talking about how important it is to fall asleep and dream inside a movie. That's Sherlock Jr. It's not even the first time that idea is on screen, but it is. It's the idea, we all have this sort of idea, whether we're Mia Farrow or Buster Keaton, that wall is permeable, that screen is permeable. And Sherlock Jr., with a sequence of edits where he goes from location to location, brilliant, just simply tells you, reminds you. It's just like watching F is for Fake, reminds you that you're watching a film, that it's all a contrivance. And then, of course, it gives you this wonderful chase sequence, which just shows you, and by the way, I'm still the master at this. Even though I've slightly undercut and I've talked about genre and I've made you see the falsity of this, now I'm just going to show you what I can really do. Anyway, you don't want me to give you a lecture on how great Sherlock Jr. is. I do wonder sometimes with these films, one of the things you do have to say, if there's one thing to say, is like, not one day, a light bulb popped over young Buster Keaton's head and he made one film. It's like, no, he was responding to things that were happening. People were playing games with cinema in this way. Should go in context. I can see that following on from it, City Lights might seem a little bit more traditional, but of course, that's just a film that's basically just a symphony. It goes in movements of different, ideas about what the world is and what it can be, which is very similar to Sherlock Jr. He's more engaged with the real world, and his version of the real world doesn't look like the real world to us. So
nobody engaged negatively with it. Nobody said, "Oh, I really love this and I hated this." They were all, we loved both of them. Probably this one just was the one that shocked me the most into thinking, I didn't think silent movies were going to be, I'd already seen Chaplin because we did The Great Dictator before Christmas, I think.
Everybody thinks they know Chaplin anyway. People who've never seen a Chaplin film think they know all about him. He's so famous. It's like Michael Jackson or Elvis Presley. Like, you could have not listened to anything, but you know. And so, of course, actually watching the films always has that sort of extra frisson. You think, well, no, but I knew it was meant to be funny, but it actually is funny.
I think that's you think it's a bit like, what did Rowan Atkinson say about a Shakespeare play? Julius Caesar isn't a comedy. If it was a comedy, Shakespeare would have put a joke in it. It's in one of his Not the 9 o'clock news sketches. It's that sort of, you think because it's old, it's not going to be a comedy because it's not good. I'm not going to be able to relate to it. But there's more laughter in 10 minutes of Buster Keaton than 90 minutes of any modern comedy. Partly because most modern comedies are like nearer 2 hours 20 minutes than.
And quite often you have stunts that people haven't spent so long working out. You can't really sort of, you can't really make allowances for the fact that some people have just been trying to make people laugh with this one thing, this one movement, this one little persona, this one, situation with a ledge, like a window ledge or something like that, or a roller skate that they have put so much work into. And Buster Keaton is that. Obviously we get something like City Lights that took like 2.5 years to make. It better be perfect.
Yeah. And the fact his name is like Buster is named after how he falls over, Just
the story is, and there's some amazing stories about Buster Keaton. You don't have to believe any or all of them, but the idea is that he fell down the stairs and Houdini said, "Boy, that's some Buster."
And then Jack the Ripper turned up.
I am maybe I'm a horrible old cynic. I don't think I feel that way, but I read a lot of film history that comes via the biographies and the press, the magazines and things like that. And I believe some of it, or I believe some version of some of it, especially when you've heard a great anecdote again and again. It can be quite productive work to just try and work out, well, if this was in some way real, what really happened, which I've done a bit of. You often hear people taking credit for things, and if you actually unpick it, you realise that something might have perhaps more interesting went on there, but who's to say?
Because you're doing your Silent London blog and you're concentrating a lot on silent cinema, but you're also, as you said earlier, working as a critic and writing stuff on contemporary stuff. Do you ever watch a movie and think, like a recent movie, and think, this is a silent movie? I can see the line here, the way it's operating. You could turn the volume off this and just watch it.
Yeah, I do see that. And you often do have films that have got very little dialogue and you think actually they didn't need it. But what's interesting is that, when you start getting narrative feature films, people are thinking about what they've seen on theatre and what happens in novels. But they have to then think very creatively about ways to avoid having to have too many intertitles or dialogue intertitles. So they have to think very creatively about how to show what's going on. And they have great directors like Ernst Lubitsch that do this. But one of my least favourite things in modern cinema is a film that has dialogue and it's bad dialogue. When you think you could have done this with a visual trick, or just, there's action films that just say, look over here, look over here. But yeah, I'm trying to think of a recent example. There was a really good one recently. Well, do you know what? I recently reviewed a film that's not particularly good, but the bulk of the film was basically silent. It's a new Hollywood film. It's the Robin Wright sort of knockoff of Nomadland, where she goes and lives in a cabin. And so much of the film that's really interesting is watching her work and watching her fail at self-sufficiency. It's called Land. And actually the dialogue scenes were all a little bit banal. So sometimes I think, why don't you lean into what you're really good at? You get a great actress, you got a great mountain, just go do it. What would Mabel Normand do? Obviously have been, for example, you have a film like A Quiet Place, which was really fun with what it could do without exposition. And I really enjoyed that, and it gave me a lot to think about. I rewatched it. I have to see the new one, although I've heard it's louder, so...
They should indicate that in the title then. It should be called A Less Quiet Place.
Yeah, a slightly noisier place. I don't know if you saw, there was a really great Robert Redford film called All Is Lost.
I thought it was epic, and that thought epic appeared in the trailer under my name.
I'm so sorry. I don't know if you've seen this film, but you might find it quite interesting. There is dialogue in that. I think he sort of swears once, but there's no need. The whole film tells you its story, beautiful story, and if you've read all the old Bible stories that you're clearly aware of, it's quite a simple story, but beautiful film. Doesn't need dialogue. You got a man on a boat. They should show it with Buster Keaton's The Boat.
And it's just him doing stuff. It's just him, like, he sees a storm and he goes and shaves. And from that juxtaposition of those two things, you understand his whole character.
Him and his sextant, it's a real journey, and it's fantastic acting, and it's fantastically cleverly arranged. And I don't think it was a particularly big hit. I suppose it's quite a depressing prospect for people.
I remember reading Redford was really pissed off at the studio because I think he thought this was a genuine Oscar performance, and they kind of undersold it. They just I think it was, he said something about, you used John Bleasdale's quote? Of all the critics, and you only use one word?
And Pamela had written that lovely blog post all about it, and you just ignored that with the artist. There was a big campaign saying, it's silent, but you'll still love it. It's silent, but actually it's got a little bit of talking, you're fine. It's silent, but it's so glamorous. Whereas I think I saw All Is Lost at London Film Festival, and there was, at that point, though I don't think there was much hype about it at all.
No.
Obviously, I was dashing to the press screening. In fact, I fainted after watching that film, but
That's so funny, because you've watched this film about this guy who's so self-sufficient, storms can't kill him, this can't kill him, sharks can't kill him, and then you have a bit of low blood pressure and you collapse.
I just sort of got a bit weedy there for a minute, had lemonade, I was fighting fit.
You were grabbing your sextant and lemonade, ready for the next adventure, which was just sitting in a room and watching another film. Let's face it.
Basically, yeah. But so wonderful. People can still do it. I think a lot of people that I spoke to didn't take what I took from All Is Lost. That's okay. We all have our different interpretations. I thought it was very sort of clear what was going on. But there are all these films that are really interesting and get kind of, one of the reasons why I'm glad I'm a film historian as well as a critic is that I'm allowed to say this film is just as important to me. When a film comes out by a director who's made great things, people don't like it as much. I just think, oh, fascinating. Oh, he's done something weird and stupid. I want to know all about it, because you can just enjoy it for what it is. I'm not here to tell people necessarily go and spend £10 at the Odeon on this, although I do also do a weekly film recommendations newsletter, so I also have to do that sometimes. But who doesn't want to see the silent Robert Redford film? And now people are queuing up to see it. And people's careers are more interesting, and nowadays I think like the cool opinion is to say that Monsieur Verdoux is your favourite Charlie Chaplin film. I think that's a very credible hipsterish response. I mean, it's not the best one, but of course people didn't like it at the time because it was so dark and weird. But part of you is like, don't you want to see Chaplin do dark and weird? Of course you do. And people are much more interesting than star ratings suggest. What people's work is more interesting than that. But also, if you're really interested in whether it's an actor or a cinematographer or a director or screenwriter, you want to know all about all the different things they did and tried. And just that's what I was saying about silent cinema. I love to see people try to do something new. It's exciting. It's the shock, the shock of Sherlock Jr.
Yeah, absolutely. The shock of the new, and even when it's almost 100 years old, it's still new.
We're finding lost films, and there are films that people just haven't been watching. I know people are confused about terminology or have strong opinions about terminology, but there are films that have been overlooked. There are films that we haven't been pushing. There are people who don't know about a lot of silent films, and there are so many great ones to watch. So they're new each time. If you haven't seen Shattered before, if you haven't seen Caligari before, if you haven't seen any number of Victor Surstrom's Silence, you're just going to be blown. My mother watched The Crowd the other day because she picked up the DVD for free in her little free library on the flats where she lived, and I didn't want to tell her anything about it except to say it's a masterpiece, just go and enjoy. But not enough people see that film.
I only saw it very recently. I have to admit, it's been on my watch list for like 3 or 4 years, and I actually got the chance to see it recently. It's just, I mean, that's a film that you see so much of life. It is one of those movies where you're looking at the corners of the screen because you're looking everywhere to see what's happening behind the people as well as the main story.
Yeah, I mean, it's just right where it hasn't been seen. It recently showed at Pordenone, and actually a lot of people who go to Pordenone haven't seen it, which is a crying shame, because King Vidor film, which is about a young man trying to make his life in the city, is completely deathless. It has an incredible, shocking moment in the middle of it, which I will not spoil, having spoiled Pandora's Box. And it's terribly moving, and it has a wonderful, wonderful ending. Wonderful ending. It's got like zero name recognition out there. I mean, I can't say who, but I'm working on a project to do with a big star at the moment, one of the biggest stars in the 1910s, international star. And I just know that if I left my house and walked down the road, no one would have recognise the name. And I've spoken to cinephiles, clever people like yourself, and they go, yeah, I know the name, but I haven't seen any of the films. So it's not just about someone like me going back to the films again and again and discovering them. It's the fact that you've got all this wonderful cinema that you can keep sharing with people, and that is super exciting. I'll DM you the name later as a little test.
Yeah, okay. But, I mean, it's what you said about Chaplin earlier as well. It's that, I mean, there are loads of people who, like Greta Garbo, Rudolph Valentino, who I'm almost surprised that they're actually people, because I've always thought, oh, Rudolph Valentino was an actual person. I just thought Valentino, it was a concept of fictional character.
An absolute person who was from a certain place and liked spaghetti and married different people and made mistakes and made wonderful films, and obviously was an incredible dancer. Yes, I know. You sort of read a biography of someone like that and you read all the sort of mundane details of their life, and also not so mundane in his case, and you just realise, yeah, absolutely. And now you're a type, you're a Valentino. People will be calling people a Valentino type without ever having seen the tango scene from the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. And, well, you're missing out if you haven't seen that. But, yeah, it's wonderful. And who doesn't want to see an early Greta Garbo or a slightly awkward Greta Garbo? The full variety of Greta Garbo. She isn't just that meme from, the sort of gif from Ninochka. Although Ninochka is perfect.
Yes, yeah. Lubitsch is one of my all-time favourites, I think.
Then you love all great silent cinema. Then, if you love Lubitsch, I mean, that's so much of it.
What book would you recommend? No, it doesn't necessarily have to be about silent cinema, or you can choose one on silent cinema. You could choose several if you prefer. But like a book recommendation for something that's inspired you, or you just plain enjoy.
I have to say a book by a phenomenal person with a great title. So even if you don't know who the book's about, the book is called Without Lying Down, and it's the biography of Frances Marion written by Carrie Beecham. So it's Without Lying Down, Frances Marion and the Powerful Women of Early Hollywood. Now, if that title doesn't sell it to you, it's called Without Lying Down because Frances Marion, who was a screenwriter and executive, basically a screenwriter, a great screenwriter, she was always looking for a man that she could look up to without lying down. That line shows you what a great writer she was. And Carrie Beecham's a great writer too. I mean, this is a great book because it investigates a really exciting part of film history to me, all these women who are writing great films and how they sort of got a bit pushed out of the industry. And also it's written like a novel, it's written like something you would read on the beach for fun. Spending time with Frances Marion in this book is fantastic, and spending time with Carrie Beecham is also a really remarkable thing to do. It's kind of, I wouldn't say it's a model because I mean, at my point in life, I'm not even aspiring to write anything like this, but, you know, it shows you what great film history can be. It's thorough and it's novelistic and it's exciting and it's full of things that other people have sort of overlooked. So, yeah, Without Lying Down, just gaze at the front cover in which Frances Marion and Mary Pickford are looking at you under that title, and you'd be quite happy.
Oh, I'm going to order that today. That's gone on my list now. It just sounds like it's right in my wheelhouse.
Believe me, it will remind you that Valentino was very real and human. He's in there a lot. So, yeah.
Did Frances Marion? Didn't she win Didn't she win a couple of Oscars? Wasn't she?
She did, and she won. She was the first woman to win the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay.
Right.
It's interesting because women are completely overrepresented in screenwriting, and they always have been, particularly in the silent era. But there were so many of them, and still it's very rare for them to win that Oscar. And we talked about Promising Young Women, and Emerald Fennell won it this year, and it's like, oh, it's still just not one that they often get. The reason there were so many screenwriters in the silent era who were women was because the audiences for the films were women, and even male executives were like, well, let's hire loads of women. We want them to write stories for women. And I know now this seems like a very simplistic binary way of looking at it. But yeah, so you get great people like Frances Marion. And she went into the pre-code era and the 1930s, which is when we have Oscars, obviously, because you didn't have them until the end of the silent era. But then she sort of got, she was less welcome. And also she could write those screenplays where you don't have dialogue. She could write screenplays where you told the story without flapping your gums.
People being able to write treatments for silent movies, being able to write screenplays for silent movies, and the amount of work that goes into that, and the amount of work that goes into making those movies in terms of just also the evolution of certain business, as you were saying earlier. And then you read J.J. Abrams talking about the new Star Wars trilogy, and they went, I think it was a mistake that we didn't write a treatment for all three films at the beginning. And you think, you think? That nobody thought? Wouldn't it be a good idea that we have a story to tell? Like,
you do want to know where you're going to end up. Yeah. I mean, it's not like the fans get angry or anything like that.
Oh man, that was so. It was such a mea culpa that was just like, wait, what?
It's very strange when we think we're in the era of writers' rooms and everything being overwritten and a national cinema very close to my heart is often attacked for having underwritten scripts. That's but yeah, wow. He just said no. We didn't know where we were going.
No.
I mean, I'm embarrassed to admit that when I do that with a feature.
To me, it's like the antidote to like imposter syndrome. It's like, Jesus Christ, if these guys aren't even trying, why should I be worried that I haven't got a formal film education or what have you? You know what I mean? Like,
with something like Star Wars, these big franchises, the idea that they're winging it is quite cute in a way because, I'm the perfect age for Star Wars, and I have seen those films again and again, and I've seen the whatever the last 6 or 70 or 55 or however many there were that came out recently in the cinemas as well. But it doesn't really excite me. Like, it's not something that I'm super into. And then the passion that feeds off it, and the idea that the people who are making all the money off it aren't even that invested themselves is quite funny.
I always think Harrison Ford is a really funny figure because he's so obviously not interested in what he's doing.
Do you mean Harrison Ford from the silent era or this newfangled one they have these days?
The new one. There was a Harrison Ford in the silent era.
There was.
Do tell.
He was just another actor of the same name. He wasn't as big a star, I guess. But it's interesting. It's a snarky thing. Silent film fans like to go, "Oh, it's I love Harrison Ford. I mean, if I'm the right age for Star Wars, then I'm the right age for Han Solo and
absolutely
kinds of things. Yeah, so he's a great actor, but yeah, he doesn't seem that engaged. It's frustrating to me when there are films that are so popular and people talk about so much that seem to be so clearly made for the money, and that doesn't mean that there aren't great people working on them and that they can't also touch on moments of absolute brilliance. And I'm going to be a tedious person who says I really love Black Panther, but all these franchises, it's such a dispiriting way to go about making movies, and it's such a dispiriting way to have to talk about them when you have to explain what happened in the previous 8 or 9 films.
Well, it feels to me like popular entertainment cinema has become, again, that might be a phrase that needs some more explanation, but anyway, let's use it for the moment. That has sort of become TV now. It's an episodic thing, and you need to watch them in the order, and you need to have seen them.
Go back to the silent era and serials.
Yeah, Flash Gordon. I actually thought of Flash Gordon earlier when you referred to women as women people. I thought, Flash Gordon and the women people.
I mean, they should have made that one. I tell you what, this is one thing, among her many other talents, why Helena O'Hara is so great, because she writes about this stuff in a really engaging way and she does get involved in it. And I'm almost like, good for you. I rarely get called upon to review a sequel. I'm quite lucky. They don't tend to make Cannes, do they, John?
Well, weirdly, they sometimes do. I remember seeing Solo at Cannes and then going to the party and meeting up with the stars and the thing, but I was really underwhelmed by it. So I was talking to Ron Howard, and he was like, "Oh, how are you?" And I was like, "Yeah, good. Have you seen anything good?" And I was like, "Yeah, some stuff." And it was quite funny how we were weaving around, not actually talking about his film. I'm not going to say anything nasty, so I'm also not going to say anything nice.
Yeah, which is a problem for a critic. But in that situation, you did the right thing, John.
Look, it's been brilliant talking to you, Pamela.
It's been a treat. Thank you.
That was my conversation with Pamela Hutchinson. I think you can agree it was really interesting and lively, and we had a great time. I certainly learned a lot, and again, I've got a list of things that I need to go away and watch now. Please remember to like and spread the word as much as you can, and hopefully I'll be with you with a new episode next week. I'm not sure because there's a lot of festivals on at the moment, so it's a little bit of a busy period, but hopefully I'll have something prepared and ready to drop next Friday. Okay, take care.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
I'm Nellie Sudri, the #1 dating coach and matchmaker for high-value singles. I've been featured in Forbes and Cosmopolitan, and you may have seen me work my magic on the hit TV show Match Me in Miami. I've even partnered with dating apps that you probably have on your phone right now. So if you're fed up and frustrated with modern dating, first of all, I don't blame you. And second, you have come to the right place. So I'm here to help you meet the person of your dreams so you can ultimately get out of the dating game altogether. I'm so excited to finally announce my new podcast, High Value Dating, which you can now stream anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'm excited for you to find love, and I hope you are too. So if so, make sure to tune in to High Value Dating.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.